Thanks.
Have a good day.
Mr. Delaney's office. Oh, hello, Mr. Delaney. You're not feeling well? I'm sorry. Yes, I can have that ready for you, and you'll be stopping in to pick it up? Oh, you'll stop in tomorrow. And what about the big presentation today at 2 o'clock? Absolutely, I'll have them conference you in from home. Okay.
Good to be with you guys today. Take your Bibles and turn to Colossians chapter 3. Colossians chapter 3. We're going to be looking at our series starting this new year called Taking Care of Business. I don't know how, I heard somebody say they'd like to be in that office where the boss calls in sick. And anyway, how would you handle that situation if that were you? Huh? Same way? Same way, huh? Yeah, I have to watch them around here. You know, they'll take off on me around. No, that's not true. Our problem is we all are workaholics in our office, so we just continually go at it constantly. I was really blessed last week as I was in the Tampa area, and a lot of people said, "I hope you enjoyed your vacation." I was not on vacation. I was writing the sermon series. We're kind of doing something different as we're going to start packaging what we do on Sunday for anyone else to use or small group curriculum, and so I'm just took that time off to write ahead this series, the next series called Unhold. You'll have to come and figure out when that's going to happen. And the Easter series called His Heart, that's March 31st. And so we're just working ahead a little bit to help us get things ready for the packaging and people to get it and things like that. But I was really blessed when I was there and I was watching our service online. It was watching the live stream, and it was really good. Terry did a great job, and I was just rooting for him, and he did everything just like I told him to do. It was really, really good. That's not true. But I was really blessed my heart to see how that worked. You know, it's good to see that take place and what the team that God has put together. A lot of things have been going on at the crossing, you know, not just during the holiday times, but the whole year. After the service today at guest services, you can go out there and you can see just pick up some papers, kind of a highlight of what we've done in 2012. Also on the back of that page is the annual report for 2012. You'll see all the income information and the expenditures. You can see all that stuff that's on that one paper. And another piece of paper there is how you can go through the church website and print out your contribution statement. And, you know, it just gives you step 1, 2, 3, how you can do that. Of course, if you do not have a computer and you're unable to do that, just take your connection card at the bottom, fill that out, and drop it in the offering plate or the slot out there, and they will print that out for you and have it here on a Sunday for you. So you can see all the things that's happened. It's amazing as we look back over 2012, all the things that we've been involved in and that have been completed. It's amazing to us to see those things. But that's 2012. This is 2013. And I really felt led to talk about this series, Taking Care of Business. Now, I was born in the 50s, but I grew up on the 60s, 70s music and Bachman Turner Overdrive, Taking Care of Business. And so as I'm writing a series, I think about some music that would go. And I said to Larry, look, Larry, I want to use the song, but you're really good at lyrics. And so he put the lyrics and changed the lyrics a little bit. In fact, I had a guy from Nashville look at that while I was in Tampa, a friend of mine. And I asked him, how's it play? And he just sat down and played it, said, you did a very good job. And so I just want to tell you, because if he needed to make some changes, I was going to bring changes back to you, but he said you did a good job. And this guy's the talent agent for Sony, so that's a pretty good deal, buddy. And then that song, I Refuse, by Josh Wilson. I think it's time for the crossing. I'm not going to say the other churches. I don't have any real influence there. But I think it's time for the crossing to start taking care of business and how we live our lives. That we get to the place, it's just like that song, I Refuse, is that we're going to refuse to sit around and let somebody else do something that God has really gifted and called us to do. And I see that so often in the lives of people that we just sit back and wait for somebody else to do it when it's in our calling, it's our gift structure that God has called us to do certain things. I find it interesting that we will hear of a tragedy And whether it's a tsunami, whether it's an earthquake, or whether it's a tornado or a hurricane, the latest in New York, and how we'll rally around sending money and all those kind of things. Uh, why do we have to wait for a tragedy, a national disaster, before we decide to get involved? Why do we have to wait to those times, to come around? Why don't we just do that as a natural part of our lives? It's in us to do it when it happens. Why can't we just be willing to be engaged in the lives of people when the time comes? So anyway, that's the idea that I want to share with you through the month of January. So look in your Bibles, and I want you to look into Colossians chapter 3. And I'm going to get to the main passage in a moment, but I want to start in verse 22. Now, if you're looking at the book of Colossians, you go, what's it all about? The teacher in me wants to tell you quickly. Paul's just trying to tell this church in the city of Colossae how to live, how to engage, how to live this newfound freedom, this new life that they have, how they can take care of business, the business that God has given them, has called them to. How can they do that? And so he gives them this instruction manual, Colossians, the book of Colossians, and then it's about how to live. It's how to live in a world that's a lot different than how we are trying to live. So he starts out in verse 22, and I know it's kind of controversial. It uses the word slaves. It says, slaves, obey your earthly masters in everything, and do it not only when their eye is on you to curry their favor, but with sincerity of heart and reverence to the Lord. Now, when you see that, and you see the word slave there, I know it might say, did the Bible honor slavery? I mean, that's something that's so detestable to us today. We would never want to put someone into that kind of bondage. That's one of the real blights on our country, is that we at one time had slavery in the United States. Well, in biblical times, there were people that were considered slaves, people who actually worked for, lived with, and owned by people. We don't have time to go into the whole idea of that. But what it was saying is, even if you found yourself in that capacity, that there was a way to live. And that was to do what you do, and do it for the right reason. When we look at that video about working, all of us have had some jobs that were just atrocious, right? I mean, right now, just think in your mind, what is the worst job you've ever had? Can you imagine? The worst job. I'm doing it right now. No, that's not true. That's not true. This is the most difficult job I've ever had, but it's not the worst job. Can you think about that worst job? Right before I left the secular world, I was working in accounting, and I got really, it's like just sucking the life out of me. I couldn't stand working in this office all the time, and actually I just lucked out and took a test, and I spent about a month at University of Florida and got my seawater license distribution. So I became an inspector for a water company. And when they were doing new installs, I do as-built drawings and surveys, for future expansion. And then we had some subcontractors, and my job was to make sure the subcontractor did the job according to plan, approved the billing, and if there were problems, have to deal and mediate with that. It was not a fun position. But a part of that is they were doing this thing called a modification to a sewer system, going from people who had a septic tank, and they were going to modify that into going into the city sewer. And so they called it a suburban air unit, all right, which is really nice, all right? And all they did was stick a sump pump down in your septic tank with a fiberglass container with a lid on it, and it would just pump it out to the city street. But they would have to run a line from that tank all the way out to the main sewer line. And so anytime one of our lines in my area was exposed, I would have to be on site in my Jeep. I had a Jeep Scrambler back then. And the worst job of that was the rookie, the green guy, the new guy hired, would be the one that have to take a manual drill down through this little 2-inch piece of pipe and drill into a pressurized sewer line. 35 pounds per square inch of pressure. And I would tell the guy, look, dude, just trying to help you make life easier. As soon as you feel that thing drop, you need to pull and cap immediately. Don't hesitate. You're going to hate life if you do. 99.9% hated life because they would just casually pull that bit out, and before they could get that little cap, 2 inches of 35 pounds of pressure of raw sewage, about 30 feet in the air. I did what every godly man would do. I ran. That is the worst job I could ever. I mean, man, sometimes I would feel so bad for the guy. I was actually trying to throw him the cap. Do something! And then I would regurgitate with him because it would be all over me. It was the worst job. I can imagine another worst job would be working on a chicken farm. I've passed a few chicken farms before. Oh my Lord. That's why I don't eat chicken. If it smells that bad, it can't be good for you. That is, anybody worked on a chicken farm? Huh? Have you ever been by one? If you've been by one, you've never forgotten it. It makes a lasting impression on you. Oh my God, that could be the worst job in the world. But even if you are in the job that you would consider your worst job, how do you do it? I mean, tomorrow morning is a work day. How are you feeling about tomorrow morning? Are you ready to go to work? Are you excited about the opportunity? Nope. Man, this person over on my right here, thank God we're not painting with the camera, hates their job. But anyway, I was here early. I'm excited about my job. I've got some things to email to Terry and to Dave so they can get ready for tomorrow. Man, I have a list. I'm excited about my job. But what if you're not? I've been in some church positions where I really wasn't excited about showing up. There are those kind of jobs out there too. How do we live? How do we do it? That's what I want to talk to you about today. Look with me in Colossians chapter 3, verses 23 and 24. Now notice the words. Whatever you do, work at it with all your heart, as working for the Lord and not for human masters. Now let's think about that. Whatever you do, whatever job you have, the thing that you got to understand is when you get up in tomorrow morning, whatever you do with all your heart. You get there early. You're not the last one in. You're the first one there. You're the last one to go if it's necessary. You work at it and do it with all your heart, even if you feel like it's the worst job in all the world. Because you are actually working for someone more than the person who's signing your paycheck. But see, that's what we usually think about. We get fixated on that immediate supervisor. And then we begin to dread that job. Do you know that we spend 40% of our lifetime working? 40%. And that is if you're just working the average 40 hours a week. Me and some of the other guys around here, I think we're probably in the 65% of our lifespan we spend working. Here's my thought. If we're spending 40% of our time at work and we're hating it, why would we do that? If that's it, then find another job. If that's the job that you need because you now are fixed on an income and you can't back off, then you got to change the way you think about it and who you work for. Because you're spending a lot of your life there. Right there. Some of you are here today and say, well, I'm retired, Craig. That really doesn't matter. Well, let's back up and pick up this word. Whatever you do. Whatever you do. You're here and you may volunteer in some capacity. Whatever you do, do it with all your heart. And do it for the Lord. If you serve in some volunteer capacity, if you're involved in some social club or some kind of activity like that, whatever you do, do it with all your heart. And you're not doing it for just yourself, you're doing it for God. That's the supervisor that we all work for. Look what it says in verse 24. Since you know that you will receive an inheritance from the Lord as a reward. It is the Lord Christ that you're serving. You know, as we begin to look at that, we got to understand that God is watching us and how we do and live our lives at this thing called the workplace. The workplace. You know, I remember when I was working in accounting, listen, just to put me in a cubicle, it's can you imagine? For me to work in a cubicle and that's my space for 8 or 9 or 10 hours a day? Oh my gosh, I would go nuts in there. And then I would get bored, and that was before they diagnosed me ADHD and put me on medication. I would just couldn't leave that thing, but I would take a lot of trips without even getting out of my chair. We call that daydreaming. Now, this is pre-computer days. There were no surfing the net at work. We didn't have those things back then. All right, this was a manual accounting program. All right, and a calculator. I mean, this was not what we have today. Man, it was something else. And I continually looked in the wanted pages for opportunities. I thought about going to fire school. I thought about this. I thought about that. Went on a mission trip to Honduras, and the missionary said, God's going to call you to ministry. And so I stayed out of church for a while because that really freaked me out, Like, last thing I want to do is go to Honduras with no running water. No way. And you didn't drink the water because you would stay a while, trust me. And then sure enough, God slowly but surely, if I ever get my hands on that missionary, he's in trouble. He's probably in heaven now, but man, I did not like my job. I did not like life. I was always looking for something else to do. But I missed the point back then, is that I had a great opportunity to do something for God at that place that I worked. I had a great opportunity. And that's where we come into this thing I call the contradiction. It's a real contradiction that we come into. We're there and we make a salary, we work, we deal with some people maybe we don't even like. Maybe they're just difficult people. Maybe there's some people that never seem to get it. Maybe they're always going to be the ones that when you see them coming, they're going to be moaning and groaning, complaining and crying, and you've run out of options to give them an advice. But here's the thing I want us to look at is this. When we think of work, we think of what and where. We think of what we do. We look at where we work. We begin to look at the what and the where, and that's the mistake. Because God's not interested in our what and where. See, what God is interested in the how you do your job. How you are in that position and how you are working through it. It's the how are you doing your job. I got to tell you, in those early days in that cubicle, I struggled in the last couple of years. I mean, I had to get these daily reports done, and because it was all about an actual unit price, and oh my goodness, I would be so just bored. And I would wait till about noon on Thursday, because on Friday I had to send him out by courier to the Miami office. So I just kind of play around on it Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I'd go, uh-oh. There's this guy I know in Miami who are going to be looking for these bad boys. If that meant I stayed and did an all-nighter to get them done, I would get them done. Because I knew I'd be in trouble. And so I would do what I had to do. I just lacked, really back then, the discipline to do it. And I missed it because God's not really interested in the what, the where I was doing. He was interested in how I, as one of his kids, was doing that job. And I'd have to say from this perspective today, I didn't do a very good job from God's standards in the last years in that particular position. I had a lot of fun watching these guys tap into these live sewer lines. That was a blast, but but I could move around. I wasn't stuck in this cubicle. You see, God is interested in the how you do what you do. I want to give you a couple of things real quick, and I'm going to call it the principles of work. Okay, the principles of work. There it is. When we begin to look at that, here's the principles. It's necessity. I think that's pretty basic, right? You work to eat. The Bible's pretty clear on that. The Bible says if you don't work, you don't deserve to eat. Now, a lot of us don't like that, but that's what it says. And so, really, it's about necessity. I think work's about identity. Work is about how you can identify with who you are, your gifts, your God-given talents. That what you have gifted and given by God that you can utilize there in that work area. Or whatever area it is that you're serving in, it's about how you can identify who you are. I think the third thing is it's about maturity. I think the workplace can be a place where it develops your character. All right, let's just do this. This ought to be fun. All right. Let's think about your supervisor, your boss today. And I'm assuming that you're not having some positive feelings towards this individual. This person God has put in your life to help develop your character. You go, how can that be? He's pushing all my buttons. That's where you need to have your buttons pushed so God can help you overcome that stuff. Could you look at your immediate supervisor as a godsend to help you straighten out some stuff in you? But we don't do that. We think, what a so-and-so that man or woman is. But they could be used to help us to mature and to develop into our character. I think it's about credibility. I think it's where we can really work and prove to be who we say we really are. We can live it out. It's about credibility. I think it's also about charity. Now, you're not going to like this. We work to make money so we can give some of that money away. And you're saying it's not about taking care of business. Mind your own business, Craig. It's a principle. We work to make money so we can give some of that money away. It's a principle of charity. And it is a principle of eternity. It's a principle of eternity. Think of your workplace right now and everything that you've got going on there. Think about the people who come into your workplace and who those people are. It has some eternal implications. You know, when I finally got my act together at that particular company, and I got to be honest with you, I was praying about, should I go to work? Should I go to this particular college? And I visited this college campus, and I had a free, full ride to college. And you're not going to believe it, in basketball and soccer. It was a midget. It was a small person college. And I was taller than most, and I was a center. No, that's not true. I'm kidding. Actually, it was a small Christian college on the west coast of Florida. And I could play ball back then. You know, I was a good point guard. And then soccer. I was a center forward on the soccer team. I only played 1 year there, but I took to soccer like a duck does to water, man. I could kick a ball and run, and it just all came together. So I go visit this college campus for a week, and it was just too freaky for me, all right? They had girls' side. I read the student manual that said no mixed bathing, and I thought it was different. I thought, you can bathe together there, wow. But it meant swimming. And they had boys' sidewalks and girls' sidewalks, and boys swam in the pool this day, and girls, no way, man. That was a little freaky for me. I thought girls were pretty cool. And I wasn't going to be a monk, you know. I just wanted a free education. And so I said, Lord, I don't know if I should take this, but if I don't get this job, I fill out an application, I'll never forget, on June the 8th of 1977. If I don't get this job by the end of June, I have to commit to this scholarship. Then I'll know. I got a call on the 11th, and I started on the 15th of June. Only to find out after I'd worked there almost a month, that I was not old enough to work there. I was only 17. And they didn't know how to pay me out of Miami, so the boss liked me and he paid me out of petty cash for, for a month to keep me. And I moved right up in that company. But here's the thing, when I finally got my act together and I began to see that God had me in this place to develop my character, to teach me discipline, I'm going to tell you, I made a lot of money in that position in accounting. I made as much money back then in the 70s and 80s as I do today. I had a lady who could have been my grandmother called me Mr. Bridgers. I thought it was pretty cool back then. It's kind of embarrassing today, but I thought that was pretty cool. Uh, Company vehicle, all that kind of stuff. Wow. When I finally got it together in that position, people would come to me and I could offer some real advice to them about faith. And I wasn't preachy. I wasn't in their face. I just began to share with them some things where I had matured in my faith and I understood the position that I was in, where people would come to me and say, hey, Craig, I'm kind of hurting here. What should I do? And these were people, listen to me. I left that company after 9 years. You know, I'm 27 years of age. And I've got people who could have been my parents coming to me and I'm helping them. Guys, if God could do that with me, he could do that with you. Don't make the mistake of wasting so many years like I did, because there is eternal implications at our workplace with everybody that you as a believer comes in contact with. You have an opportunity to share with them some things that can change their not only earthly life, but their life for all of eternity. Now, I'm not saying being a preacher at work, okay? We had one of those in another office in another town. And this guy would just send out these crazy things to the courier, and people would mock him and make fun of him. And I felt bad for him, and I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about being a real-life person, doing a real-life job, working because it's a necessity, working because, you have an opportunity to develop yourself, to have some credibility, to be able to really find out, to be who you say you are, through your identity. But to understand, there's some eternal implications here. I can make the difference in the life of another person. You ever think of your workplace as that? I know where some of you are employed, it's a mission field. It's a great opportunity. And those people that are there, they'll probably never, ever, ever, ever want to come to church. In fact, one of the things that we're working on in 2013 is I'm going to do this thing called lunch break or life lessons over lunch. We're trying to work it out with the library downtown. We lost the space. Where I'm just going to do every other week a luncheon for the business people downtown so they can come. And we're just going to encourage them. We're just going to give them some truth, some principles to live by. Some things that these principles come from my life, from the Scripture. That's how we impact people. Now, we've already talked with some people in that downtown area that are the crossing people. They're godly people. That doesn't mean that because they come to the crossing they're godly. It should be, but that doesn't mean it is. But anyway, we're going for 50-50, all right? They have connections in all these areas, a lot of these areas. But they can be the point to invite, just to encourage people. They may never darken these doors, but if we can go where they are to make an impact in their lives. You see, guys, eternity hangs in the balance. I'm going to tell you that this series is about the eternal implications of taking care of business. It's really not just about the workplace. Is that for 2013, my passion, my heart is that you and I, as people who gather together at one of the Crossing campuses, that we begin to see opportunities that have eternal implications in the lives of people. That somewhere, somehow down the line, we're able to really share faith and hope with people. That they get it. That they experience real life change. Here's the point I want to leave you with today. And if you're going to work tomorrow, here's the challenge. If you're going to your place that you volunteer tomorrow, here's the challenge. If you're going out with your guys golfing, or your girls that do whatever the girls do, all right? I'm not going to say that because I always get in trouble. Whatever you ladies do, I'm sure it's great. I meant that with a sincere heart. Here's the point. There it is. Work as if God were there with you, and He is your boss. That's right. God's your boss. You go into the office tomorrow morning, you go to your workplace, whatever it is that you do, you're showing up and you know God's there and He's really the boss. What would our workplace look like if we went to those places that we served in, either in an occupation or we voluntarily did it? We went there thinking, I'm going to do this just like I would do it if God were right here and in charge. How would I do it? Would your work environment be different tomorrow if you went there with this in mind? God's here and He's in charge. Would your attitude be different at your workplace? If your attitude was different over a period of time, could it make a difference in the lives of people that you're going to associate with? I think it would. I think it would because I've had that experience myself. Where when I finally got it right, I didn't go looking for them. They came looking for me. And I had a ministry going at work before God ever took me out to do ministry in the church. Right there at work. What would it be like? They were going to go to that video, that song. I was kind of doing this series, Taking Care of Business, and I came across the Josh Wilson song, I Refuse, and that's what my prayer is. But, country music has a way of just telling a life story. And so I picked out some country songs that are on there are a top 10 all-time songs about work from the country genre. Can you guess what number 5 is? Take this job and shove it. That would be Johnny Paycheck. And that would be number 1. But here is number 5. Listen to it real quick. That's right, working 9 to 5. Old Dolly Parton. Yep. I got a lot of things I could say, but I'm not. Here's what I wanted you to pray about today. That we as the people, God's people.
As Pastor Craig is praying with the congregation, I encourage you to click on the Contact Us button on this page. There you can leave your prayer request or the few comments that you have. Please be sure to share this message with your friends and family. They can access a message anytime, 24/7, at thecrossingchurch.co under the Message Archives section. God bless and have a great week.